Hi, welcome to my channel, Keto for Real People. Today we're going to talk about the number one mistake that I know that you are going to make on the keto diet. How do I know that you're going to make this mistake? Well, because I know you. I know you because most likely we grew up in the same country if you're from America. We went to similar schools. We've had the same nutrition advice since the time that we were little. We grew up with the same media. So I'm pretty sure that you're going to make some of the same mistakes that I made. So you might be thinking, this is my third video, and you might be wondering, why am I listening to this person who's talking about keto and they've only been doing it for like 6 weeks? I should be listening to a podcast by one of those guys that's been doing it for like 10 years, and definitely go listen to some of their podcasts too. I think that they both have value, but I think the value maybe of listening to somebody who's just a few weeks ahead of you is that they still have fresh in their mind what it's like to be a newbie, how hard it is, and what mistakes they can make. So I really wanted to make this video as soon as I possibly could because my first two videos, I was just raving about how great it feels to be on the keto diet. And then I realized that if people are making this mistake, they're not going to feel great. And they're going to feel like everything I said on the first two videos was a lie. But I really want you to have success on the keto diet. So I just felt like I needed to make this video. So let's get started. You ready for this? The number one pitfall that almost every newbie makes on the keto diet. Okay, you ready for this? Drum roll, please. It's not eating enough fat. So I know you're afraid of fat. How could you not be afraid of fat? I was afraid of fat when I started the keto diet. Fat is the boogeyman whom the healthcare industry has haunted us with our entire lives. And some brand new diet idea that seems sort of crazy is not going to undo everything bad that we have been taught about fat, like in one moment. So I just want to be one more voice that is maybe in a line of voices that could eventually change your mind. Like you might need to hear this a few times before um, it sinks in, and that's okay. As I was thinking through what I want to say in this video, I realized that I might have been unclear about something in my first two videos. And I kept speaking about having this huge increase in energy and brain function and feeling so different than I felt on other diets. And I started to think, you know what? I wonder if what people have been hearing me saying is that if you give up carbs, you're going to feel really great. And I'm realizing that's only half the story. I apologize if that's how it came across. It's not giving up carbs that makes you feel really great. It's giving up carbs and it's adding lots and lots of fat. That's the combo is what makes you feel great. Just giving up carbs makes you feel really, really terrible. I called it in another video low carb purgatory. It's not a fun place to be. So, I want you to succeed at this. And if you're going to succeed, we're going to have to get rid of your fear of fat as quickly as we can. So let's tackle your fears head on. Why are you afraid of fat? I know exactly why you're afraid of fat because I was afraid of fat too. Here's the two biggest reasons that I came up with why we are all afraid of fat. Number one, you and I are convinced, absolutely convinced, that fat will make us fat. And at the very least, fat will stall any weight loss that we could have otherwise had. And number two, we're afraid of fat because we're afraid it's going to clog our heart and arteries. I put this one second because even though it's, of course, a bigger concern overall, we all know that if it is actually true that it would clog our arteries, it would take a while. So it's not maybe as pressing in our minds as the question of, will I put on 5 pounds next week if I try eating this way? If you'll have the patience to listen to this video, I hope I can give you some serious science that will hopefully help you with at least the first one of those two fears. And I'm going to tackle the second one in a later video. So let's get started. So fear number one, you're afraid that eating fat will make you fat and it'll keep you from losing weight. Now, my goal is only to scratch the surface of the science on this, but if what you hear intrigues you, I encourage you to pick up a copy of a book. It's called Eat Fat, Get Thin. I've not read it yet, but it's on my queue at my library with maybe like 10 other books all on the keto diet. Yeah, I'm really into this reading books thing. But with this new brain that I have with the keto diet, I can down like a book a day if I have the time and I can read late at night. Like people, it's just weird the things that I can do with my brain on the keto diet. So just today I went to the library and I got Keto Clarity and Cholesterol Clarity, two books by a guy named Jimmy Moore. And I plan to read them tomorrow. But anyway, I wanted to mention that book, Eat Fat, Get Thin, because I wanted to let you know that there's actually a whole book out there dedicated to just the idea that I'm going to talk about today. And so I don't want you to think that I got this from like some random website and that there's like hardly any people out there in the world that believe this. And also, just for your information, I have a family member who's a doctor and who's been afraid of fat his entire life. And he read the book recently. He read Eat Fat and Get Thin and has completely changed his view of fat and started eating fat. So, all right, this is a complex question about whether or not eating fat can make you fat. And I want to clear up just two things before we get started. We have to be clear, absolutely number one, that when I say that you can eat fat and get thin, I'm really saying that you can eat fat in the presence of almost no carbs at all. So let's not forget that. That's pretty much a universal agreement because, like I keep saying, I've been geeking out like overtime on like keto books and articles and podcasts. I have yet to find a single person in the world who thinks that fat, when eaten with carbs, won't make you fat. It absolutely, most definitely will. There's no question. The question is whether or not fat eaten on a very low carb diet will make you fat. And then question number two is we have to be super clear on the type of fat. And in order to get you to the fun science part of this video that I'm going to give you, which I can't wait to tell you, I want you and me to just agree for a moment that there is such thing as a very good fat and a very bad fat. And let's not get into what they are right now. Let's just agree that there is such a thing. So everything I'm about to tell you only applies to a person who eats the good fats, none of the toxic, unnatural, highly processed fats. So, okay, are you ready for some super cool science? I love science and I always have, and I love talking about this. So, I'm going to introduce you to the stories of two different biohackers. By the way, a biohacker is a term which means a person who is totally geeky, like me, but much more geeky. And they use their own body to do scientific experiments on. And then they share their results with geeky people like me who just love to hear about this stuff and can't get enough. So, for a few of these biohacker guys that I follow, as far as I can tell, this is like all they do for a living. Just do these experiments on their bodies and podcast and write about it. I love it. So, number one guy, I'm going to tell you about his name is Sam Feltham. Actually, never heard of him until recently. I was listening to a podcast by Jimmy Moore. He's the one who wrote those two books that I mentioned that I got from the library today. He's done over 1,300 podcasts. So he's interviewing Sam Feltham, who I'll link to in the show notes. By the way, I want to say a quick thing about show notes. I had heard people say that for a while and I didn't know how to find them. So right under my video, you'll see a line that says something like, in this video, I talk about the number one mistake that newbies make. And then there's these tiny little words that are almost invisible that say more. And if you click on more, that's where all these links will show up so that people aren't like, you said you were going to put all these links in there and I can't find them. It's really easy to miss that. So I'm going to link to this really awesome podcast. And actually, you could even just listen to the first 10 minutes. So this guy, Sam, he's a biohacker and podcaster from the UK. He's a keto diet advocate, and he wanted to prove that when you eat high amounts of healthy fats without carbs, The normal calories in, calories out that we've been told our entire life doesn't apply in that situation. So for his experiment, he forced himself to eat 5,700 calories a day. Okay, let me repeat that. 5,700 calories a day of very high fat. He did this for 3 weeks. He did a little bit of protein and he did hardly any carbs. And I apologize, I don't remember the exact percentages, but I do think that this is interesting enough that this interview is interesting enough that if you want to know that, you'll go and listen to at least the first 10 minutes yourself. So, he didn't give his exact weight, but he did mention that he was a slim guy. So I'm guessing maybe he weighs around 180. It doesn't really matter. But he did his calculations and he was saying that a guy weighing about his weight who eats 5,700 calories a day should gain about 14 pounds after 3 weeks. Now, I'm not going to tell you the results yet because you have to keep listening. He did another experiment for 3 weeks and he ate once again exactly 5,700 calories a day. But instead of most of them coming from fat, they came from junk carbs. He did this for 3 weeks to see how much he would gain. And then finally, he ate 5,700 calories a day on what he called healthier carbs, like higher fiber and whole grain, to see how much he gained. So, 3 different experiments. I'm going to tell you the results backwards. So, the junk carb, 3 weeks, he gained 15 pounds, which shows that there is something to that calories in versus calories out paradigm, at least when carbs are involved. In the healthy 3 week carb week, he gained 10 pounds. Okay, so now are you ready for this? In the high fat 3 week period, eating the exact same amount of calories that he had eaten when he gained 14 pounds, in this period of time, he gained 3 pounds. But he lost 1 inch around his waist. So that was possibly some muscle. So just let that sink in for a second. He ate the same amount of calories over 3 separate 3 week periods, but they did something completely different to his body. There is a scientific explanation for what was going on. And it has everything to do with how you feel when you're really on a keto diet, not on like a kind of keto or cheating diet. And you're not skimping on fats and you're not eating bad fat. But it has everything to do with how you feel when you're doing keto for real. So, some of you who are like super weight conscious may have heard that study I just gave you, and you may have thought, but he still gained a pound a week for a total of 3 pounds. But what you'll hear him say in the interview was how terribly difficult it was for him to force himself to eat that much food when he was on the high fat period of time. In other words, if he had been noticing his hunger signals and not ignoring them by stuffing himself, he would have never been able to eat that much food. However, another super interesting thing about him is that he did not feel full and satiated and like he had to stuff himself when he was on the other 2 periods of time, like when he was eating the junk carbs and he was eating even the healthy carbs. He just didn't feel that like, oh, I don't want to eat anymore, but I have to for my experience experiment. So I thought that was really interesting. And then another cool part in the interview, he told about how terrible the carb withdrawal was when he was coming off the junk food 3 week. And so he was craving carbs so much the third day after the experiment ended that he walked past a can of Coke and he absolutely just like grabbed it and couldn't help but opened it. So he opened it up and then he just sat there and watched it pour down the sink and it felt kind of like he was drinking it, but he had just was craving carbs so bad. So, before I explain to you the science behind what happened, I want to tell you another story. So, Dave Asprey, I've mentioned before, wrote the Bulletproof Diet. He has a really popular health podcast. He's the one who was obese from the time he was a child and as an adult became 100 pounds overweight for a couple of decades and tried all the diets. Then found the keto diet and has kept his weight off for 10 years. So, he did the same thing as the Sam guy. He wanted to prove that healthy fats eaten without carbs do not cause you to get fat. So he decided to eat 4,500 healthy high fat calories every day, which for him was approximately 1,500 more than he usually ate, which, isn't as many as Sam ate. But Dave conducted the experiment for 2 years. And Sam was so tired of being stuffed with the fat because it makes you feel full, unlike carbs, that he said he couldn't have gone longer than 3 weeks. So, over the course of these 2 years, Dave decided to completely quit exercising so that that wouldn't skew the data at all. And by the way, all of this information is linked in a podcast in the show notes. And if you even just click on that link, it's really cool because at the very top of the page, he shows a picture of himself, um, where um, how he looked at the end of these 2 years. So, before I tell you how much weight Dave gained, I want you to come up with a guess in your head. So remember, Sam gained a pound a week when he was eating about 3,000 more calories than he needed. So Dave was eating about 1,500 more than he needed. Okay, did you come up with your answer? Okay, drum roll, please. Dave gained 0 pounds. So like I said, he blogged about it and he has a picture of a six pack that he grew without doing any exercise, which right now I don't have a category to process that particular part of the story. I do have an explanation for you for the other parts, but if anybody understands how someone can grow muscle by eating fat, please leave me a comment. Um, anyway, because Dave was obese for most of his life, none of us can hear that story and say, oh, he's just one of those guys who can't gain weight no matter what they eat. So I hope these two stories intrigued you enough to listen to the explanation behind what happens when you eat a lot of healthy fat without carbs. But first, let's review what is the common diet problem. It's that when you decrease your calories, your body decreases how many basic calories it needs to function, which we call your basal metabolic rate. Your basal metabolic, no, I can't talk. Your basal metabolic metabolic rate means even when you're not exercising, it's just the regular functions of your body. Digestion, keeping your heart beating happens even when you're asleep. So, when you start dieting and your body lowers the amount of calories you need to survive, I call this your body is fighting you. That's my unofficial name for it. That's maybe not the best way to describe it because really your body just wants to stay alive. And I want you to know that this process of your body slowing down its calories when you slow down your calories is very well documented. I've never heard of anybody who disagrees with it. It's been very well proven. If you go from eating 2,000 calories a day to 1,500 calories a day, your body simply slows down the number of calories it's burning. And this is why 90% of the people from the show, The Biggest Loser, gained back all their weight in 5 years. And a lot of them gained back even more. They slowed down their metabolism, then they returned to eating how they used to, and they gained their weight back. So, the holy grail of all weight loss is giving your body the right signals. You want to kind of like sneak the fat off your body while distracting the metabolism slowing triggers as you flush the fat. And as you flush your fat, you want to be saying to your metabolism, nothing to see here, moving right along. There's no famine, there's no shortage, just using up a little fat here, a little fat there. And the healthy dietary fat that you eat without carbs is kind of like a magic signal that tells your body, okay, yes, we burned more calories than we consumed today, but there's no need to panic. There's no need to slow down the metabolism. Everything's just fine. There's no need to make this person get cold. There's no reason to slow her brain down. There's no reason to slow her energy. Um, I just remember having this feeling when I've been on a diet of like standing at the bottom of the stairs and being like, oh, I don't want to walk up those stairs because I have no energy. And then all of a sudden, when you're on the keto diet, you're just like racing up and down the stairs like it's nothing. Like I remember one time carrying like 5 laundry baskets up because I only wanted to make one trip. It's so ridiculous. Um, So the normal diet protocol, when you cut calories, it just your body cuts energy. Like I said, you feel tired, you feel cold, your brain doesn't function well. You're so miserable that you eventually break down and eat a pint of ice cream because you just don't care anymore. It's just not worth being on a diet and feeling like that. But when you eat lots of healthy fat without carbs, something magical happens inside your body. It revs up your metabolism, which is what Dave experienced during that year. He writes about although he didn't enjoy having to force himself to eat that much, because unlike the junk carbs, which people can eat forever and never feel full, it's really hard to keep eating when you're eating that much fat because fat does make you feel full. So he didn't like that part of it, of the 2 years. But the part that he did like was how much energy he had, and I believe he wrote the book Headstrong. I could be wrong about that. I know he has a book called Headstrong, which is about what foods to eat to make your brain function really well. And I believe he wrote that book while he was doing this super high fat thing. So his theory is that the extra fat that he was consuming, his body used for fuel to burn up to give his brain more energy, to increase his body heat, and to just make him be able to move around and exercise more. And by the way, your brain is made up of 60% fat. So it makes sense that your brain would really work better when you have more fat. It's also the building blocks. The fat in your diet is the building blocks for every cell in your body. So you want to make sure that you're eating good building blocks. So I kept thinking about this toaster analogy, and I don't really know if it's the best way to describe it, but like when you get an analogy in your head, then you just can't think of another one. So that's kind of what happened. So I was listening to this podcast a couple weeks ago, and the person was trying to say that the calories in, calories out isn't like a super good analogy for the human body. And then the person was like, unless you're a toaster, energy in, energy out isn't really a great analogy. So I just got the toaster stuck in my head and I started thinking about like toasters. um, how could I use the toaster analogy to explain this fat thing? So if this doesn't work, oh well, but here goes. Okay, so my idea was that think of your toaster as being battery operated as well as plugging into the outlet. So your toaster is plugged into the outlet, and let's say that you want to use up your batteries. Now, in this analogy, the batteries are the fat in your body that you carry with you. It's your own fuel. And then the plug going into the outlet is the food that you eat. So you go on a diet, meaning that all of a sudden you start giving your toaster a lower electric current that you used to give it. So you are hoping that if you give it a lower electric current, it's going to keep outputting the same amount of energy to brown your toast, but it's going to get the difference in the energy from the battery power that your toaster has. So, um, what starts happening with your toaster when you decrease the amount of electricity coming through the current is that instead of it using the battery power, it sends out a really weak signal to the toast. And so now it's taking you like 3 or 4 times as long to toast the bread. But what we're trying to say with the eating more fat thing is that what you want to do is you want to up the current into your toaster. So now you're giving it, let's say, twice as much electrical current as you were giving it before. Now the toaster is like super secure that its batteries aren't going to run out anytime soon. So it starts putting out not twice as much energy, but it starts putting out 3 times as much energy. So your toast is getting done 3 times as much, 3 times as fast. I just realized that maybe a toaster isn't the best analogy for people that are trying to go off of bread, not think about bread, but it's too late now. So anyway, maybe you're toasting some ketogenic bread, which I haven't actually tried making. So your toaster it's getting twice the power from the wall, but it starts toasting your bread 3 times as fast, which means it starts draining your battery, whereas before it wasn't draining your battery because all it was doing, or maybe it was draining it just a little bit, but mostly it was just decreasing the output. So all analogies break down, and of course, your body has an actual brain, whereas a toaster is just dumb. But the actual point is that your body feels really comfortable and really secure when you're giving it a lot of fat, that it has no problem with burning more each day than you're consuming, and it's gonna let you just keep going and keep going. It's also occurred to me that, even after we recover from our fat phobia, there might be a period of time where we simply don't know how to get all of the fat in. So I just wanted to give you real quick a few suggestions. I usually add either heavy cream to my coffee, or if I have time, I'll do the bulletproof coffee, which is recipes online. It's not that it really takes that long, but you do have to just get out a little blender or something. Um, and I know this is going to sound kind of like a snake oil salesman pitch, but I do actually really like the brain octane oil or any other kind of MCT oil, which is made specifically of C8. I know that sounds super technical, but if you go online, you can figure out what that means. It's just a kind of oil that's derived from coconuts that converts directly to ketones in your body, and I feel like it gives me a ton of energy. It's too expensive for me to have all the time, but if I have like a super duper busy day, I will use it. So some other suggestions, I'll put tablespoons and tablespoons of butter on my steamed veggies. I do like grilled asparagus, artichokes. I do just all kinds of vegetables, and I just have gobs of butter on them. And remember, this isn't like the Atkins diet where you're eating like hot dogs and Atkins bars. You're supposed to have your plate full of like half vegetables just piled on there. And then pile some butter on, pile some olive oil on. I think I mentioned the other day, I had a Caesar salad that was full of full fat Caesar dressing. And then I piled some olive oil on top of that. And I just had so much energy after I did that. It was super, super, super great. So, you may still be skeptical and afraid of fat, and that's okay for now. But I do want to challenge you, if you're interested at all in just trying out these concepts and being your own little mini biohacker, I would encourage you to just spend 2 weeks doing your own low key experiment. And it can go like this. Week number one. Well, okay, first of all, I have to say, this only works if you've already gone through your whole carb withdrawal thing, your keto flu, and you've detoxed from that poison, and um you're past all that stuff. Then you could spend 1 week using your fat sparingly and just whatever you feel like uh, you want to use, which is probably just a tiny bit, because I know you're still afraid of fat. I know you are. And you can just put only the amount of fat that you feel comfortable on. And then kind of write down how you feel each day and your energy. And if you're like carrying 100 things up the stairs at a time because you feel so out of energy. And then the second week, I want you to go like all keto crazy. Like I want you to have 2 tablespoons of olive oil on basically everything you eat. And I want you to have butter on everything. And I want you to have heavy cream. And I want you to go like keto crazy. And I want you to record how you feel. And also, I want you to put down what happens on the scale. So, I just want to briefly go on a rant about healthy versus unhealthy fat. So I'm just going to make it as quick as possible just to kind of pique your interest so that you'll do a little bit of your own snooping. So prior to the Industrial Revolution, human beings never, ever, 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 ever consumed rapeseed oil, which is used to make canola oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil. The easiest way to figure out a healthy fat from an industrial seed oil is to think about what its source is like. So, avocados, olives, and coconuts are all very oily. as you're eating them that you're biting into something very fatty. And that is how you tell that the oil is very easily extracted from those plants with minimal processing. But did you know that canola oil has to go through 8 chemical processes to extract the oil from the seed? Yes, this stuff can be mass produced and grown cheaply, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. The more difficult the oil is to remove from its source, the more unstable the oil is, which means it's damaged by time on your shelf and it's damaged by heat. When something oxidizes, it causes damage in your body. It can cause damage in your delicate blood cells. Cholesterol comes and tries to repair the damage like a band aid, and then it gets blamed for heart disease. And now I'm starting to stray into the whole alternative heart disease theory, which I want to save for another time, and especially after I've read Cholesterol Clarity. But I do just want to make the point of the damage that these oils do inside your body because of how unstable they are and how they oxidize, and they basically were not meant to be extracted from the seeds that they came in. As long as you were actually eating a seed, maybe it would be fine. But have you ever heard of anyone eating a cotton seed or a rape seed or a safflower? I don't even know what those things look like. The industrial seed oils that take this really complicated processing are so unstable that somebody came up with the genius idea in World War II to add a hydrogen atom to them. And they came up with this kind of oil that has a shelf life of like 1,000 years. And then they tried to make you think it was healthy because they put the word vegetable in it. So, I mean, truth be told, I've actually been quite slow to jump on the whole like health food, organic bandwagon. Like, I'm just, for one thing, I don't have the money with the amount of people that I have to feed to do really pricey things. But the one thing that I have done for years is I've not allowed that hydrogenated stuff in my house because it's not found in nature. Your body uses the fat that you eat to build its tissues. And the molecule is shaped the wrong way with the hydrogen atom. Like, I just can't believe that it is called a food. So just watch out for those salad dressings. And I don't want you to get like all overwhelmed and burned out with this whole oil thing and then just give up trying. But I just want you to make it your goal to eventually rid your house of it. I've started making just a few of my own salad dressings, and they've actually been really easy. Like, some of them just have 4 ingredients in them, and they also taste a lot better. I've actually learned to make my own mayo, and I don't want to discourage you at all from trying, but I do have to admit that my first attempt didn't emulsify, and I had to FaceTime with my sister Robin. She had to like walk me through it. And the second time I actually did get it, and ever after that, it's kind of like riding a bike. Like, once you figured out how to make mayo, um, you'll always know how to do it. But also, my mom and my aunt, theirs failed the first time too. So just watch a YouTube video or something, and you'll get it. So it's just my hope in this video that I was successful in changing your mind just a little bit about the benefits of eating gobs and gobs of healthy fat, just so that maybe you'll try it and then you'll find out that everything I'm talking about and those two biohackers I mentioned we're talking about aren't like just completely made up. It's just one of those things that you have to experience yourself to believe. And then once you're feeling super good, I think you'll be motivated to read about some of the science behind what actually causes heart disease and whether or not it is actually the healthy fats that are causing heart disease, or is it the industrial seed oils combined with gobs and gobs of carbohydrates, which, by the way, form a kind of fat in your blood called a triglyceride. So people will say things like, sugar is fat free and white flour is fat free. Yes, but as soon as it hits your bloodstream, it turns into a triglyceride, which is a kind of fat. So, anyway, this was supposed to be a conclusion. And I got kind of on a tangent, but I just wanted to give you guys enough information to let you know that there is evidence that you can be super healthy and you can lose weight. by eating lots and lots of fat, and maybe I just got you to be a little bit less afraid of fat. So that's all for today. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe or share it with a friend who's also afraid of fat. All right, have a good day. Bye bye.